There's something about hotel lighting that makes everyone look a little shinier than they really are. Maybe it's the way the warm bulbs hit polished glass and dry-clean suits, or the fact that people smile too wide when they're holding champagne flutes and business cards. Carolyn thrived in this kind of room, where confidence passed as int asterisk Macy and everyone pretended they weren't keeping score. We were at a formal business gala in downtown Seattle, hosted at one of those high-rise venues with a panoramic view of the bay. The kind of event where words like synergy and pipeline got tossed around like peanuts at a baseball game. I didn't mind these things, not really. They were part of her world, and for years I had learned to drift along its edges. I usually stayed a step behind, smiling politely when someone mistook me for a consultant or board member. That night, I had stepped away to get us drinks. Carolyn was deep in conversation with a few colleagues near the wall of windows, her laughter cutting clean through the hum of ambient jazz. When I turned back with 2 glasses of wine, I paused beside the small table where she'd set down her clutch and phone. That's when her phone lit up. A call was coming in. I didn't reach for it. I didn't even lean closer. But the screen was angled just right, and the name lit up like a warning flare. Red Heart Calvin. My first thought was that I didn't recognize the name. Calvin. It wasn't one of her co-workers. Not someone she'd mentioned from her book club or the gym. And the heart? That little glowing emoji changed everything. It wasn't there by accident. It meant affection. Int asterisk Macy. Intention. My chest tightened. Not in the dramatic Hollywood heart attack kind of way, but in that subtle, tightening thread that winds itself around your ribs and doesn't let go. I stood still. Let it ring. I don't even know if I breathed until it stopped. I stared for a second longer than I should have. My hand hovered near the wine glass, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. That one little icon had unraveled something inside me, and I was trying not to show it on my face. When Carolyn returned, she noticed it instantly. Her eyes flicked to her phone, then to me. There was a flash of panic, quick, subtle, but I caught it. She picked up the phone and turned it over, screen down. That might have been the moment I knew something was wrong. She slipped into a smile that I'd seen 1,000 times before, only now it felt off. Too casual, too rehearsed. Sorry about that, she said, gesturing vaguely toward her phone. One of the clients in Denver. Time zones are the worst. I nodded, didn't press, just handed her the wine. But I watched her. I watched the way she looked away from me when she said it. The way her fingers clutched the stem of the glass too tightly. The way she immediately started talking about something else. Some story about an upcoming leadership retreat and a funny thing one of the interns had said. She was buying time. Throughout the rest of the night, she seemed like herself, at least on the surface. She mingled, laughed, touched elbows and smiled in group photos. But she stayed just a half step away from me. We didn't share inside jokes. We didn't lean close to whisper sarcastic observations like we used to. Her body was there, but her attention wasn't. When I tried to reach for her hand, she was suddenly adjusting her purse or raising her glass in toast. When I made a quiet joke during the keynote, she gave me a distracted nod and looked past me toward the dessert table. She wasn't really present, and I was starting to realize she hadn't been for a while. That night, when we drove home in near silence, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe it was a client. Maybe the heart emoji was just a habit. Maybe I was overthinking it. But then I remembered something else. Months ago, she had asked me, casually, if I thought couples needed to share phone passwords. I had shrugged and said, I mean, we've got nothing to hide, right? She had laughed, kissed me on the cheek, and changed the subject. A week later, her iPad was locked. New passcode. I didn't say anything at the time. That night, those moments came back with a sharp edge. When we got home, she kicked off her heels by the door, complaining about her arches and pouring herself another glass of wine. I stood in the kitchen watching her, trying to gauge her mood. She was humming to herself, off-key, and scrolling on her phone, probably deleting something. Or maybe I was just being paranoid. I didn't know what to believe anymore. You okay? I asked. She looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten I was there. Yeah, just tired. she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. It was a long night. She walked into the bedroom without another word. The door closed softly behind her. I stayed up a while longer, poured myself a glass, sat in the dark with the city lights flickering through the window, and that name burned into the back of my mind. Calvin. I didn't know who he was or what he meant to her, but I knew this: Carolyn had never labeled me with a heart emoji in her phone. I didn't sleep well that night. I watched the clock turn from 2:14 to 2:15 to 2:16, and all I could think about was the way she avoided my eyes after that phone rang. The subtle shift in her demeanor. The way distance had crept into our lives so gradually I hadn't noticed until now. And somewhere deep down, in the pit of my stomach, I felt it. This wasn't the beginning of something. It was the end of something we had both been pretending was still whole. The morning after the gala, I lay awake long before the alarm. Carolyn was still asleep, curled away from me, her back a soft wall of warmth I didn't dare reach for. I watched the ceiling fade from shadow to gray as dawn slowly peeled the night off the sky. My chest felt heavy. Not with rage, nothing that sharp, but with that familiar ache that comes when you've been trying to ignore something too long and it finally demands to be heard. That name, Calvin, hadn't just thrown me. It had flipped a switch I didn't realize was there. And once it clicked, my brain started pulling threads, rewinding the past 6 months, replaying moments I hadn't thought twice about at the time. It started small, I think. A shift in her routines. Carolyn had always been consistent, almost religiously so. Her mornings were sacred: coffee at 6:30, NPR on the Bluetooth speaker, 20 minutes of yoga by the window. But somewhere along the way, the yoga mat stopped unrolling. Instead, she started going to the gym. First, just twice a week. Then almost every day. I need to shake things up, she had said with a laugh. Sitting all day is *ing me. That seemed reasonable. She even invited me to go with her once. I did. Just once. It was a pristine, modern facility filled with sleek people who never looked like they sweated. She introduced me to a few trainers, all of whom seemed to know her well. This is Austin, she had said with a tone that felt careful. Polite. Not warm. Not possessive. Not like someone talking about their husband. I remember noticing that. Then there were the showers. Late-night ones. That was new. Carolyn had always been a night owl, sure, but she never showered before bed. She claimed she was sweating in her sleep lately, a change she attributed to stress and hormonal shifts. Again, plausible. Logical. But when I offered to turn the heat down in the bedroom or get new sheets, she brushed it off. It's nothing. Don't worry. But I did. There were new clothes. A sudden interest in style. She started dressing sharper even at home. She used to wear those soft, oversized sweaters, the ones with little thumb holes she loved. Lately, it was fitted tops, new jeans, perfume she hadn't worn since our anniversary in Vancouver 5 years ago. I noticed, but I told myself she just wanted to feel better in her skin. People change. That's what I kept saying. I wanted to believe that. Her tech habits changed too. Subtle at first. Passwords reset. Apps I didn't recognize. She switched from iMessage to WhatsApp because it was more secure. She had always been open with her devices. I'd borrow her tablet to read articles, check the weather, play music. One day I picked it up and it was locked. She smiled and said, "Oh, forgot I changed the code. I'll tell you later." She never did. Even the language between us had started to shift. She used to call me love when she passed by, a little "hey, love," tossed like a breadcrumb to remind me we were still connected even in our busiest hours. That had faded. Now it was just Austin or sometimes nothing at all. Silence had started moving in like furniture. Comfortable, familiar, and quietly permanent. And then there were the trips. Work trips that seemed to multiply. Leadership retreats, team-building weekends, workshops in wine country. I had always been supportive. Her ambition was one of the things I loved most about her. But the frequency was off. One weekend, she said she was going to a mindfulness workshop in Bellingham. I offered to drive her, but she declined. "It's just easier to carpool with some of the girls from HR," she said. Something about her tone felt off. A little too prepared. Too much preamble. When she came back that Sunday evening, her energy was strange, tense, and floaty at the same time. She didn't want to unpack. She claimed she was exhausted but stayed up scrolling through her phone for hours. I remembered another detail just then, lying in bed with my eyes wide open and my heart sinking slowly into the mattress. On one of those trips, she had come back with a small bruise just under her collarbone. She laughed it off. Yoga block slipped during stretching. "You'd be amazed how clumsy I can be." I hadn't pushed. I trusted her. Because that's what we did. We trusted. Or maybe I was just too tired to look closely. She stirred beside me then, rolled over slightly but didn't wake. Her face was peaceful, beautiful even. It struck me how quickly love can turn into something fragile. Something that cracks when the pressure is too much, but no one wants to admit it's already broken. I got up carefully, made my way to the kitchen, and poured a cup of coffee. I didn't turn on NPR. Instead, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my calendar, looking back through the months. I started listing all the times Carolyn had been away, all the places she had gone. I didn't even know where some of those hotels were. Some she never mentioned by name, just vague locations. I opened a notes app and started writing down everything I remembered. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Patterns, dates, something I could hold on to, something solid. Because here's the thing they don't tell you. Suspicion doesn't hit like lightning. It's not loud. It's not fast. It's slow. Creeps in like fog, blurring the edges of what you know, and suddenly you're staring at your own life like it belongs to someone else. By mid-morning, I was still sitting there, notes growing, memories multiplying. A gym membership she had paid for in Bellevue, 20 minutes from her office. A dress I found the tag for in the trash. Red. Expensive. I'd never seen her wear it. A text message once that popped up while we were watching a movie. Tonight. It disappeared before I could read the sender's name. She laughed and said it was work drama. People can't function without me, she joked. I smiled, laughed with her. But now it all felt like a trick. The worst part? There had been moments, quiet, still moments, when I felt her slipping and I did nothing. I told myself we were in a rough patch, that marriage ebbs and flows, that we were just two busy people in a stressful time, trying to hold it together. But maybe that's the lie people tell themselves when they're afraid to look at the truth. When I heard the bedroom door creak open behind me, I closed the notes app. Carolyn appeared in the hallway, hair tousled, wearing one of my old t-shirts. She smiled sleepily, that same sweet, familiar smile. "Hey," she said softly. "You're up early." I smiled back, just as softly. Couldn't sleep, and just like that, we slipped back into the performance. Two actors in a play neither of us had auditioned for but knew by heart. But I knew something now that I hadn't yesterday. There were patterns I had ignored, and I wasn't ignoring them anymore. I didn't say anything. Not to Carolyn. Not to anyone. Suspicion is one thing, but proof changes everything. And I knew I couldn't afford to be wrong. I couldn't accuse her of something so ugly, so irreversible, unless I had something real. So I did what I never thought I would do in a marriage built, at least in theory, on trust. I got quiet, and I started watching. It began with a GPS tracker, one of those small, discreet ones you can buy online without raising eyebrows. It took me all of 10 minutes to install it under the rear bumper of her car one night after she went to bed. I felt like a criminal, like a spy in my own life. But I told myself it was just information. Data. That's all I was gathering. That's how I justified it. I gave it a week. 7 days of pretending. Smiling at the right moments. Letting her kiss me on the cheek when she left for her workshops and client dinners. I tracked her car every day. Most times it was where she said she'd be. Her office. The gym. A restaurant once or twice. But nothing too alarming. Until Thursday. That afternoon, she texted me while I was on my lunch break. Heading to a leadership offsite. Won't be back till late. Love you. Leadership offsite. Right? I waited an hour. Then I opened the tracker app on my phone. She wasn't in the city. Not even close. Her car had stopped outside a hotel. The Alderwood Inn, tucked out in the suburbs, 25 miles from her office. It wasn't a business hotel. It wasn't close to any corporate buildings. It was the kind of place people go when they don't want to be found. My hands shook as I stared at the screen. I zoomed in, confirmed the parking spot. Checked the timestamp. She'd been there for 40 minutes. I tried to breathe, to stay rational. But the truth had weight. Pressed into my lungs. Made my chest ache. I left work early. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't make a plan. I just got in the car and drove. I didn't feel angry. Not yet. just hollow, like I was floating above my own life, watching someone else's marriage fall apart. When I arrived, I parked across the street. The hotel was one of those modern, low-rise buildings, all glass and gray stone. Not fancy, but nice enough to feel deliberate. Inside the lobby, I found a cafe, quiet, understated, with 24 chairs and an espresso bar facing the elevators. I chose a table with a direct line of sight and sat down, pretending to scroll through emails. But all I did was wait. 45 minutes passed. Then an hour. I nearly convinced myself I'd made a mistake. And then I saw them. The elevator chimed and the doors opened. Carolyn stepped out, her head tilted back in laughter, followed closely by a man in a navy button-down shirt and khakis. He was tall, probably mid-30s, clean-cut. Comfortable. He wasn't touching her at first. But as they moved toward the exit, he placed his hand gently on her lower back. She didn't flinch. She leaned into it. Then they stopped by the door, and I watched as he brushed a strand of hair from her face, leaned in, and kissed her. Not a casual kiss. Not a colleague who had too much wine kiss. It was intentional. Familiar. Hers. And Carolyn kissed him back. I sat frozen. Not breathing. Not blinking. I didn't feel rage. Not immediately. Just confirmation. That was what hit me the hardest, not the betrayal itself, but the sudden, sharp clarity. There it was. The thing I had feared. The thing I had suspected. Playing out 10 feet in front of me, beneath hotel lobby chandeliers and soft jazz. She had another life. And I didn't belong in it. I stood slowly, careful not to draw attention, and slipped out the side door. I didn't follow them. Didn't confront her. I didn't know the man's name. Didn't care to. I didn't snap a photo, though I could have. I didn't scream or throw punches or create a scene. I just walked. The air outside was cool and dry, and I didn't even realize I was shaking until I tried to unlock my car. My hand trembled against the fob, and I had to steady myself against the hood. When I finally sat down, I stared at the dashboard for a long time. The GPS app was still open on my phone, her car's little red dot blinking silently on the screen. She was still there. Still with him. That night, I didn't go home right away. I drove without direction, looping through neighborhoods I hadn't seen in years. Old places. Places Carolyn and I had walked through back when we were still dating. Before promotions. Before mortgages. Before the quiet space between us had grown too wide to cross. Eventually, I found myself by the lake. There was a public dock where we used to eat takeout on Friday nights, legs dangling over the edge. I pulled over, sat on a bench, and tried to remember what her laugh used to sound like when it was just ours. Before it became something she gave to someone else. The worst part? I wasn't surprised. It was like I had already known, somewhere deep inside, and was just waiting for my body to catch up. All the late-night showers. The passwords. The silence. It had been there, right in front of me, and I hadn't wanted to see it. But now I couldn't unsee it. When I got home, late, long after she had returned, Carolyn was already in bed. She mumbled something about being exhausted. Her voice was too sweet. Too careful. Like she was performing for an audience she wasn't sure was still paying attention. I brushed my teeth. Got into bed. Turned away from her. I didn't ask how the leadership workshop went. And she didn't offer. We lay in silence, inches apart. Worlds away. After the hotel, after the kiss, after that quiet drive home through neighborhoods I used to love, I didn't confront her. That surprised even me. Part of me expected I'd burst through the door that night, throw her betrayal in her face, demand answers she'd twist into lies. But when I walked through the front door and saw her on the couch in pajamas, curled up with a mug of tea and a book she wasn't really reading, I didn't say a word. She looked up startled, smiled a little too brightly. "Hey, you're home late." "Yeah. Long day," I said. And that was it. I learned something about myself in that moment. About power. About the kind of strength that doesn't need to raise its voice. The silence didn't mean I was swallowing my pain, it meant I was planning what came next. I started with the bank accounts. Quiet transfers. Not enough to trigger red flags, but enough to protect myself. I opened a new checking account in my name only. I rerouted my paycheck. Removed my name from a few auto-pay bills she managed. I signed up for electronic copies of every statement she thought I never read. I changed the passwords on my personal accounts. Pulled my credit report. Froze anything that might be shared. It was tedious, methodical work. But it gave me something to do, something to control. Next came the documents. I visited my brother one weekend under the excuse of helping him fix his back porch. We hadn't done anything like that in years. But while I was there, I slipped a sealed envelope into his safe, a copy of our mortgage documents, tax returns, and every bit of financial evidence I had gathered, including the GPS logs from her hotel visits. He didn't ask questions. He just nodded, handed me a beer, and said, "Whatever this is, I got you." I stopped engaging at home. Not coldly. Not cruelly. I still said good morning. Still took the trash out. Still did the dishes. But I no longer reached for her in bed. No longer asked about her day. No longer waited up when she was late. It was like someone had flipped a switch and suddenly I was just done. She noticed, of course. She started trying harder. Dinners appeared on the table when I got home, pasta with homemade sauce, steak and potatoes, roasted salmon with lemon and dill. She hadn't cooked like that in years. There was always music playing in the background, candles lit, wine poured. She'd greet me at the door in that same robe she used to wear when we first moved in, back when everything still felt new and silly and unbreakable. Her voice was sweet. Her touch was light. But I didn't flinch or fall for it. I smiled, said thanks, ate quietly, and disappeared into the guest room with my laptop. She started suggesting weekend getaways. I found this great cabin out by the peninsula. Remember that place with the hot tub? I'd nod. Say I was swamped with work. That I'd love to, just not right now. She tried asking questions. Is everything okay? Yeah. Just tired. You've been so quiet lately. Long week. Every response was a deflection. Not to avoid the truth, but to contain it. To turn my silence into a fortress. Because I had seen what I needed to see, and now it was a matter of preparing for what came next. It's strange how easily a person can perform in Macy. She touched my arm more often, laughed a little louder at my jokes, leaned her head against my shoulder when we watched TV, something she hadn't done in months. I let her. I played along. Not because I wanted to pretend, but because I wanted her to wonder. There's power in withholding. She couldn't read me anymore. That was new for her. Carolyn had always been one step ahead in conversation, quick with a comeback, always knowing just how to disarm me. But now? Her we *P***NS slipped right off. Nothing landed. Nothing stuck. One night, I came home to find her sitting on the couch with old photo albums open. Our wedding photos. Our honeymoon in British Columbia. Her hand was resting on a picture of us standing by the lake, smiling, barefoot in the sand. Do you ever miss this? She asked. I sat across from her, looked at the photo. Sure, I said. She waited for more. I didn't offer it. The silence stretched out between us, thick and sharp. She closed the album and left the room. The next day, she texted me a photo of a reservation at our favorite restaurant, one we hadn't been to in over a year. I responded with a thumbs up and didn't show. That Friday, she picked up my favorite bourbon from the specialty store across town. Left it on the counter with a note. Thought you could use something strong. Love you. I poured a glass, drank it alone, and never acknowledged the note. The old Carolyn, the one I married, might have called me out by now. Might have demanded answers. Pushed for truth. But this Carolyn? She was nervous. Playing defense. Afraid that pressing too hard might expose what she was trying to hide. And she was right to be afraid. I had stopped trying to fix what was broken. Stopped fighting to feel close. I wasn't angry, not anymore. Anger had burned through quickly, a flash fire. Now I was something colder. More deliberate. I was watching the last pieces of our marriage unravel, and I was letting it happen on my terms. And in that silence, I found a strange kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from healing. That would come later. This was the kind that comes from knowing you've outgrown someone's ability to hurt you. I had stopped loving her the way I used to. Not because I wanted to, but because the version of her I had loved no longer existed. She had replaced that version with someone who could lie. Who could hide. Who could kiss someone else in a hotel lobby and come home with a smile. And I couldn't love that person. So I didn't. And without love, silence isn't absence. It's armor. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic day. Not an anniversary or birthday. Just a Wednesday, gray sky, light rain, the kind of Seattle morning that blurs into every other. I woke up before the alarm. Sat in bed for a while, watching the ceiling. I could hear the soft hum of the dishwasher Carolyn had run overnight and the occasional creak of the heating vents. She was still asleep beside me, one arm curled under her cheek, breathing slow and even. She looked peaceful. Untouched by guilt. Or maybe she was just good at playing peaceful. By now, I couldn't tell the difference. I got up, showered, dressed, packed a single duffel bag. Just the essentials. A few changes of clothes. My laptop. Charger. Toothbrush. A hard drive with every file I'd collected over the past month, GPS data, bank statements, itemized logs. All the pieces of the truth she thought I hadn't noticed. I left a note on the kitchen counter. Don't call. I need space. I'm safe. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. That was it. No explosion. No final argument. No guilt trip or tearful goodbye. Just the clean break she never saw coming. By the time she woke up, I was gone. The apartment I moved into wasn't glamorous. A furnished one-bedroom overlooking a small lake about 30 minutes from the city. It smelled faintly of pine cleaner and freshly painted drywall. The furniture was plain but comfortable. A kind of intentional blandness that felt like safety, like freedom. I unpacked slowly, took my time setting up my laptop, arranging my books on the small shelf, folding my clothes into the drawers. There was something strangely therapeutic about starting over in a place with no history. No ghosts in the walls. The silence was no longer armor. Now it was a bomb. 2 days passed. Then she showed up. I don't know how she found the place. Maybe tracked my phone through an old shared app. Maybe guessed. Either way, it was around 4 p.m. on Friday when I heard a knock at the door. I opened it and found her standing there with a basket. A basket. Inside, baked goods, a bottle of wine, and a stack of old photos tied with twine. She smiled like this was some sort of quaint reconciliation ritual. Her eyes were a little puffy, like she'd cried. But not enough. Not for this. "Hey," she said softly, stepping closer. "I thought I'd bring you something." I didn't move, didn't step aside. She glanced past me into the apartment. "Wow, you really did it. You left." I nodded. "I said I would." There was a pause. "I brought cinnamon rolls," she offered, lifting the basket slightly. Like that was the currency that would buy her way back into my trust. "You always said mine were better than your mom's." That stung a little, because it was true. And for a moment, the smallest flicker of memory crept in. Sunday mornings in our old kitchen. Her hair in a messy bun, flour on her cheek, coffee brewing behind her. But it passed. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. I wasn't letting her in. Not into this space. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She looked surprised. Almost offended. "I just wanted to talk," she said. "I'm not ready for that," I replied. She held up the photos. "I found these. Us in Vancouver, remember? That little cabin by the water? I thought you might." "I don't need reminders," I said. Her face changed then. The sweetness cracked. "What is this, Austin?" she snapped. "Some kind of punishment? You vanish, leave a vague note, and now you're just, what? Erasing me?" "I'm not erasing you," I said. "You did that yourself." That hit. She blinked, lips tightening. "I made mistakes," she said quickly. "I know that. But you don't just get to walk away without talking to me. Without giving me a chance to explain." I tilted my head. "What exactly would you explain, Carolyn?" She hesitated. That it wasn't serious. That I never meant for it to happen. That I was confused. I let out a slow breath. "So you thought I'd open the door, smell cinnamon and nostalgia, and forget what I saw?" Tears welled in her eyes now, and maybe they were real. But real tears can't undo real damage. "I've been thinking about us. About everything. I want to fix this." I raised an eyebrow. "You've been thinking for 2 days. I've been thinking for months." She blinked again. "Austin, I love you." "No," I said flatly. "You don't get to use that word like it still means the same thing." She stepped forward, but I took a step back. Her eyes flicked down to the basket. She set it on the ground carefully. "I'm not giving up," she said quietly. "You'll see. We're bigger than this." I didn't respond, just stood there, letting the weight of her failure fill the silence. She finally turned and walked away. I stood on the porch for a long time after the sound of her car faded. That night I went through the photos she left, not out of nostalgia, but to prove something to myself. To remember what it had felt like when her smile was real, when I didn't have to wonder who she was texting, when the world we built didn't feel like a stage. Then I burned them in the fireplace. The next morning, an email arrived from her. Subject line, "Let's talk." The body was a mix of emotional reasoning and half apologies. I don't know why I did it. I think I was scared. I felt disconnected. I need you to understand how hard this is for me. That was the tone of it, what she felt, what she needed. No ownership. No apology that didn't center her pain. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer. Because love can be blind. But survival sees everything. 2 weeks passed before I heard from her again. This time, it wasn't a knock at the door or a pleading text. It was a certified letter. Heavy envelope. Legal tone. Inside was a letter drafted by a lawyer I didn't recognize, alleging emotional neglect and mental cruelty. It was bold, even for her. She was threatening to take half. To go after the house. To spin a narrative where I was the villain who abandoned his wife during a difficult phase. The letter hinted at contested divorce, court appearances, public drama. I read it once. Calmly. Then I slid it across the desk to my attorney and said, handle it. That night, another email came. This one was different. No threats. No accusations. Just desperation. She told stories from our early days. The coffee shop where we first met. That rainy hike where I gave her my jacket and we laughed until our faces hurt. She attached a photo of a note I'd written her years ago. I don't care where we are as long as I get to be next to you. Then she wrote, you don't mean that anymore, do you? No. I didn't. The Carolyn who got that note is not the one standing in front of me now. That woman vanished somewhere between the passwords and the hotel rooms and the half-hearted lies. More messages followed. Texts filled with long, rambling paragraphs. Apologies. Childhood memories. Reflections on her parents' divorce. On how she'd always feared becoming her mother. Then silence. She didn't show up again. Didn't call. It was like she finally felt the weight of the silence I'd been carrying. The finality of it. And for the first time, she didn't try to fill it. Months later, I found myself at another networking event. This time in Portland. New crowd. New skyline. A fresh kind of anonymity that I welcomed like oxygen. The venue was smaller, more modern. No jazz trio, no forced smiles. Just quiet conversations over craft cocktails and soft music. I was seated in a corner, sipping a drink that didn't have a name I recognized when someone slid into the seat beside me. A woman I'd met briefly during a seminar earlier that day. Her name was Rachel. Sharp mind. Quick wit. We started talking about books, fiction, mostly, and drifted into work projects and road trips and favorite cities. The conversation was light. Natural. It didn't carry weight or pressure. It didn't feel like a performance. At one point, someone she knew passed by and, in a friendly mix-up, said, "Oh, is this your husband?" Rachel laughed. "No, just a new friend." But I didn't correct them. I just smiled. Not because I was pretending, but because, for the first time in a long time, I didn't need anyone's permission to be at peace.